Hey guys, it's Cece, and today I am here to talk about being a baby gay. I want to thank my patrons who chose this as my February video. Every single month my patrons get to vote in a poll on a video I'm going to do the following month, and in February they chose this one. This video is going to be me talking about the fictional characters I definitely was crushing on when I was a baby gay. So some backstory, some lesbian backstory. I identify as a lesbian. I like girls a whole lot. But I didn't come out even to myself until I was in college. It's just like a late bloomer situation where I was born and raised in an incredibly conservative and homophobic town, and so I completely shut off any part of my brain that might identify liking women. But just because I wasn't consciously crushing on women doesn't mean I wasn't unconsciously crushing on women. You know what I mean? So today I'm gonna talk about the fictional characters that I was obsessed with when I was a little girl. And by obsessed with, I mean I was clearly in love with them, I just didn't have the language to talk about that. I guess since this was in the thumbnail, I should put it somewhere behind me now. It's been a minute since my little pride flag was in a video. Oh. So yeah, let's just jump in. I have a bunch of fictional ladies to talk about that I loved dearly in my lesbian soul. So first up, we have to talk about the one who started it all. The OG. The one that people attracted to women far and wide have said, yes, 'twas she who made me realize my attraction for women, and that is Elizabeth Swann from the Pirates of the Caribbean movies. Oh, this hit me like a ton of bricks when I was a child. Pirates of the Caribbean Curse of the Black Pearl came out in 2003, which means I would have been about 8 years old, and I don't think I've been the same since. It was a reset. I don't want to do the internet thing where I say it was a cultural reset, but low-key it was a cultural reset. In 2003, it was just the idea of this woman who loved pirates and pirate mythology and how great she looked in dresses, and I was into that. But then later on in the series, she wanted to be a pirate king. She wore masculine clothes, but she also wore feminine clothes. It appealed to me very deeply on a level I wasn't willing to acknowledge. I was into it in about a billion different ways. The mixing of the masculine and feminine is going to be a theme with this list. It's something I was so unconsciously drawn to as a child that looking back on, I'm like, oh my god, you baby gay, you androgynous queer in the making. It throws it back to the time that every time I was playing with other girls, I always wanted to play the boy, like that was a huge thing. How many among us who are queer, I'm not limiting this to like one letter, how many among us who are queer at some point in their life had an obsession with Peter Pan? I loved dressing as Peter Pan, because you know what? That was a role that a lot of women played in theater, but you could have Wendy and Peter Pan, so you could be obsessed with both, and it was, for me, it was all about expression. Like, I feel like the Peter Pan thing is a different thing for every person in the LGBTQIA+ community. A lot of times it's a trans guy thing, a lot of times it's like a bi thing where you're into all of the people. For me, it was like that idea of women who could dress as men that I was like, ooh, that appeals to me in ways that I don't know how to talk about it yet. And now me, a full lesbian looking to get a tailored suit to wear to a wedding, I'm like, oh man, that was that baby need for androgyny and like the occasional butch leaning coming through. That was Elizabeth Swann. I hope I don't talk about all of them for this long. Queer Feels, the video. Next I want to talk about Haley Graham from the lesbian classic, okay fine, from the gymnastics classic Stick It. I was a gymnast for like 10 years of my life. I started when I was really young and I quit when I was in about high school, but I was part of gymnastics for a while, and if you were in gymnastics in the early 2000s, you knew about Stick It. This was not only the biggest release in the gymnastics community, it was the only release. This is all we talked about. And here was the goddess Haley Graham. She was buff as hell. She could just... she could crush you like a grape. And then she would get into that ice bath. And she never had a male love interest. She showed no interest in her male friends. And she dressed like this. It was an awakening. Okay, moving on. I'm gonna talk about some animated ladies. Like, we all knew this was gonna happen. When we were kids, we watched animated movies. So of course I have to talk about animated ladies. And let's be real, for many women who were attracted to women, the true moment for many of us was watching Kim Possible, specifically the character Shigo. This is not an unpopular opinion. This isn't coming out of nowhere. This seems to be a uniting force behind sapphic humans. Shigo wasn't goody-goody like Kim Possible, which, like, you know, of course, you can like goody-goody, that's fine. But I feel like in the early aughts, we were so conditioned by queer-coded villains that I know I'm not the only one who was often into queer-coded villains, and so when Shigo came along, it wasn't even that she was queer-coded. It was just that, like, I was too drawn to villains at that point in my life already to care about Kim, because here was Shigo. Were other sapphic people attracted to Kim Possible? I'm curious. For me, it's Shigo forever and always. Wow. Let's stay on the track for animated. Let's get all of these out of the way. These animated characters. Every Totally Spy. Every Totally Spy. There were 3 Totally Spies. I was in love with all of them. This was my show. It's all I cared about when I was a kid. I was really into Cartoon Network, so I was watching a lot of the other shows. I was a big, like, Powerpuff Girls fan. I watched a lot of Courage the Cowardly Dog. But the ultimate show was Totally Spies, and I loved all 3 of them. I think it was because it was, like, this early impulse within me to love girl gangs and communities of women speaking to one another in media because it is so rare. It's probably why I still love girl gang movies. It's why I love Ghostbusters 2016 and why I love Birds of Prey. It was just ingrained for me from a very young age to love girl team-up films. And every single one of the Totally Spies brought something new. And overall, I was obsessed with Totally Spies to a degree that I can't claim was anything but early gay yearning. Another iconic animated trio, the Hex Girls from the Scooby-Doo universe. This is another one where I know I'm not alone. I know so many queer women who were so in it for the Hex Girls. This also appeals to the fact that I have always been interested in music, in musicians. It's just a thing. It's fine. Girl rocker groups. Oof. Nothing was greater. So I would watch all of the movies that featured the Hex Girls on repeat when I was a kid, over and over and over again. It's so fascinating because the way that I think I showed my attraction to women when I was young was obsession without it being perceived as attraction. So I wasn't attracted to women in these movies or these TV shows. I was just really into the show. It was one of my favorite things, so I had to watch it over and over and over again. And that is, like, that's the case for every single lady on this list. It was a thing I loved watching, and I couldn't articulate why, but I loved it. And the Hex Girls were on that list. I would, like, try to download their music so that I could listen to it, like, on my desktop computer. It was my dream from a very young age to come up with a Hex Girls themed costume at some point. Like, at that point in my life, it would have just been a Halloween costume, and it would not have been the only witchy trio that I went for, like, as a costume, because I also did the Hocus Pocus look, so it was also witches. There's something very sapphic about witches that I think I was identifying at a young age. It's also probably why I was in love with Halloween Town, but oof, these Hex Girls. I loved them. There are also 2 princesses I was very drawn to as a child, and I firmly believe that this was because of their gender presentation. So that would be Mulan from the Disney movie Mulan, and Anastasia from the film Anastasia. I was in love with both of them. Hardcore. I used to say that Mulan was my favorite Disney movie, and it's still one of my favorite Disney movies. I love it, but I know that I was drawn to it because of the freedom of expression for Mulan, and it's not uncommon. Many of us saw and still see queer themes in Mulan. But that freedom of expression of her being able to wear masculine clothing but still be attractive to Shang, I mean, that was a whole bi thing, that was a whole trans thing. like I said, there are many queer feels. But oof, I loved both Mulan's femme presentation and her masculine presentation. I was deeply into it, and the same goes for Anastasia. I was always a little bitter when she, like, got super fancy at the end of the movie, because that wasn't my fave look. Like, when she wears that blue dress and she lets her hair down, and suddenly, somehow, that hairstyle that has looked to be about this long is, like, a whole ponytail thing. I never understood that. Where the hell was she hiding that hair? But in that early outfit where she wasn't hyper-feminine, I watched Anastasia too many times. We should talk about Star Wars ladies, because I had big love for Star Wars ladies. Leia, specifically, was a huge one. She had so many costume changes, and her outfit on Endor is brilliant. I also love her Hoth look. Like, both of them are very high up on my list of yes, yes, thank you, yes. I think it's because she's wearing pants in both of them. I don't know. Yet another, like, gender presentation thing. But also, I was super in love with Padme Amidala from the prequels. I didn't like the prequels. I was, like, old enough when I watched them that I was like, these aren't good objectively, but I'm going to keep watching them. And it was for epic lightsaber battles, which I was very into. And it was for Padme because I thought she looked amazing. Like, let me give you a look into what I was like around the time that the prequels were released. So Episode 1, Phantom Menace, came out in 2001, which I would have been 6 at that point. I had a new baby sister. But just before that, just before Phantom Menace came out, I was taken to Disneyland on vacation, and I insisted on dressing as Cinderella. I had a whole Cinderella dress that I'd had at home for a while. I had this pretty little princess cap, and I was like, this is it, this is my look, but I'm going to need to bring my Mulan sword with me. I needed my Mulan katana. And every time anyone tried to take a photo of me in Disneyland, if I was not allowed to hold my sword, my plastic sword, I would sob, I would stomp, I would be furious. I was inconsolable until I could be a princess and also wield weapons. I feel like you now understand me better. So Leia was both a princess and a warrior. Very into that. Padme appealed to the, like, super opulent fashion-obsessed side of me, plus Natalie Portman is beautiful. Alright, I have 3 more ladies that I want to talk about, and 2 of them are like the sapphic icons. So first, I want to talk about Kathleen Kennedy from You've Got Mail, because I don't think many people know about You've Got Mail or are passionate about You've Got Mail. It's one of my top 3 movies of all time, and at this point I don't even know if the movie's good anymore. Like, it's been there for my entire life. I've watched it so many times that it doesn't matter anymore. All that I cared about was You've Got Mail. And I think it's because Meg Ryan had this thing going in the 90s where she had super short hair, and there's a point in high school when I cut off all my hair, and I kept trying to have Meg Ryan's hair in You've Got Mail, which is yet another sapphic feel, because how many among us have, like, looked at someone and been attracted to them and been like, do I love them or do I want to look like them? You know, it's the queer girl journey. So, in high school, before I knew I was gay, before I was even close to coming out to myself, I chopped off all my hair, went through a bunch of different hairstyles, and one of those hairstyles was my desperation to look like Kathleen Kennedy. I was also in love with her because she owned a bookstore, and there was no greater thing to me in my youth than owning a bookstore, and I really haven't grown past that. It's still the only thing in this world that matters to me, like working with books, having a huge book collection. Clearly, that is my vibe. So, yeah, I loved her. Also, I know that she, only dates Greg Kinnear for a little bit in the movie, but Greg Kinnear in You've Got Mail has such lesbian vibes, and I think like was calling to like. Alright, let's talk. Let's talk about the 2 that matter the most to the sapphics. First, we have Evelyn from The Mummy. The Mummy was such a queer awakening film. This is another one that appeals to many people. I've heard many bisexuals and pansexuals say that The Mummy was their awakening because, you know, like Brendan Fraser, I get it. He looks fabulous. But you know how I was talking about women who love books? Oof, this gave me such a sexy librarian, like, hang-up. I was obsessed with Evelyn. I was obsessed with her whole vibe, her glasses, her look, her want for adventure, her outfits. Rachel Weisz. I would let Rachel Weisz run me over, and I'd thank her. Goddess. A goddess among us. I will never be over the Mummy. And finally, since we're talking about bookish, glasses-wearing academics, you know I have to talk about Miss Honey. Like, Miss Honey from Matilda. First of all, easily we can say that she's a lesbian. No question. She never shows any attraction for men. And I loved Matilda. Matilda, because Matilda also doesn't really have crushes on any guys, so it was just this movie I could project my entire identity on. I watched Matilda every day of my life, and that's only a slight exaggeration. Like, I would legit watch it over and over and over again in one day, finish the movie, start it over again, and I think it's because I saw a ton of myself in Matilda, this weird girl who loved to read. I didn't go to public school until I was like 15. For most of my life I was homeschooled, and so I saw so much of myself in this weird girl who just wants to be able to have friendship, and then she bonds with Miss Honey. Miss Honey who lowers her glasses in that way, you know, where she's like, you know, the gif. And Miss Honey is like a cottagecore lesbian. All she cares about in the world is her students and her cottage, and, like, eventually she does get her big house back, but that vibe where she's just like, here's some tea in my little cottage that I made for myself. I was thrown out of the place where I wanted to live, so I created this little home where I can be myself. Lesbian vibes to the max. Oh my god. I feel like we have started and ended this video on the two ultimate notes. Because Elizabeth Swann and Miss Honey, no one appealed to young gay Cece more than these two people. Like, obviously I had crushes on all of the women that I've spoken about in this video. I was in love with them to a degree that it just emerged as so much obsession. Every time I talk about realizing my attraction for women, it feels like it's a conversation that always goes back to Elizabeth Swann and Miss Honey. I think that there's also this whole thing that, like, the reason a lot of queer women kind of have a hard time admitting, like, the crushes that they had on characters or women when they were kids is because it's this internalized homophobia, this internalized lesbophobia, where we see attraction to women as perverse or obscene or explicit, and so we are told that that's bad. And so I think that there's kind of a power, honestly, in sapphic people acknowledging the crushes that they had on women when they were children, because it's okay no matter what type of crushes those were. And, like, I feel like as someone now who is confident in my attraction to women, who doesn't feel bad for it, who is empowered by my attraction to women, it's important for me to reclaim this part of my life where I felt like it was a bad thing. And it isn't. It was a crush, and I was allowed to express it, and I expressed it as obsession because that's the only way I knew how to express it. And I have a lot of love for young Cece, who just watched movies over and over again going, I just think they're neat, when she was really trying to contend with the fact that there was a lot more to that I just think she's neat than thinking she was neat. It was attraction, it was early signs. I have a lot of love for her. And this video is for her. And hopefully it's for all of you too, who were maybe crushing on anybody, who were maybe experiencing queer feels when you were a kid and you didn't know how to express it. Hopefully you have found some similar feels in this video. Reclaim it. This was such a weird video to film because I didn't outline it as much. I didn't really know how I was going to do this video, so I hope you liked it. I hope that this was a video that you enjoyed. It's one I've wanted to do for a while, so thank you to my patrons for voting on it, because don't know if I would have done it otherwise, and I'm really glad I did. This felt therapeutic, and it felt nice to just be able to talk about how hot women are. Women are so beautiful. Oh my god. Please let me know in the comments below a character, a fictional character that you had a crush on when you were a kid. Regardless of the type of crush that is, just let me know about a character that you identify as an early part of your childhood and go, that was a crush. If it was part of queer feels, a part of a queer awakening, I would love to hear about that as well, but really I'm just asking for that moment when you were a kid that you were probably experiencing a crush. And if you weren't, if you didn't experience a crush and you still don't experience crushes, that's fine too. Tell me a character that you really identified with as a kid that has become a part of your story. Anyway, thank you all so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I will see you in another one very soon. Bye!